So I had watched the oral arguments, and everybody seemed really stoked about it in the Supreme Court. And everybody was like, oh, I think they're going to side with you. But I watched the oral arguments. She did not say anything. She did such a shit job. I was screaming the whole time. The judge would ask her a question. I'd have the specific answer. And like a court case or something to reference. I knew exactly what to say. And this bitch had nothing. That was weak ass shit. And I was pissed. I had these motherfuckers. They uploaded every other Supreme Court case that was heard that day, and they're all 15 minutes. They're all exactly the same. They're structured. They uploaded all of them, all 5 other ones, on one day. I waited 4 days, and they just didn't upload mine. They just didn't upload mine. So I call, and they give me the runaround. Well, we're not in charge of that. It's not our department, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, it just led to me hanging up. Well, then a couple days later, they still hadn't uploaded mine. So I called, and I threw kind of a fucking fit. And I said, then you need to get me to somebody that I can talk to, because my case is the only one that you aren't showing. I had oral arguments, and now nobody will upload it, but you uploaded all the other ones just a couple days later. And now it's been 5 or 6 days later, and mine's still not up. I was pissed. So I wrote this into them, because I'm like, fuck this bitch. I'm going to represent myself. I'm like, I need to do something before, you know what I mean? It took everything to get here. And I'm afraid this bitch is squandering it. So this is what I write to them. And then I see the oral arguments, and I add a supplementation. So this is my happy ass typed up and submitted to the Supreme Court. So I said, over the last year of waiting for justice, I was able to talk to Mariah Ruttenberg twice on the phone. She allowed me zero room to talk, add, or change anything that is crucial to the freedom and the union that holds this country together and in balance. I said she wouldn't speak to me and actively avoided giving the information. I called the appellate office dozens of times, and it went to voicemail 100% of the time. I was able to talk to an office staff or human exactly 0 times over a year of calling and leaving messages. I have not been represented adequately under the law. I said I have not been represented after the Mason City Police Department robbed me, kidnapped me, falsely imprisoned me for months, and in fact are actively extorting me by making me show up for probation for multiple forcible felonies that they are actively committing against me. I said, with all due respect, you don't have the authority under the Constitution to tell me that I can't bear arms and defend myself. I said, if that strikes a nerve or bothers you, I ask you to take a step back and reevaluate what you're doing. I said, there's a balance in this country. The balance comes from the gun. I said, when I as a citizen commit a crime, a man with a gun shows up to detain me, convict me, and ultimately make me serve my sentence. At any point in that process, if I choose not to comply, force will be used upon me up until death until I comply. I said, in the same way that the government has rules and laws it must follow. I said, the Constitution lays the boundaries in which you and the rest of the government must operate inside of. When the government commits a violation against the rights of the people, there are processes to rectify the grievance. The Declaration of Independence is clear, and I quote, prudence indeed will not dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. He said, however, it is proceeded with that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such a form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I said, I am the people. I said, I would argue that kidnapping me, extorting me, falsely imprisoning me, and telling me that I am unequal to the rest of the people forever is exactly destructive to those means. I said, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I said, there is an ultimate consequence to the government for doing the wrong thing. That is precisely what the Second Amendment is for. It's not so that I can go shoot every weekend. It's not for me to go get that deer to feed myself every year. I said, although it is a small part, the Second Amendment is for me to defend myself against a tyrannical, evil government who would knowingly and willfully violate its people. I said, it is wholly counterintuitive that you would have the ability to disarm me when that right is exactly for me to defend myself against you if you refuse to comply with the Constitution. I said, it's the old saying, if you hold a gun and I hold a gun, we can talk about the law. I said, if you have a gun and I don't, you aren't governing by the consent of the people, you are governing me at gunpoint. Ironically, the exact opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended and wrote in plain, clear English. I said, I am deeply bothered that not only could I not speak to my old lawyer, now that I have a new one, I can't contact him either. I said, I am terrified that Mariah didn't do what I asked. She said that she wasn't representing me, that she was representing the idea. No, ma'am. You are representing me. I went to jail. I stood up against abusers with guns. I sat on probation, unable to defend myself and unable to enjoy the freedoms that I was promised. I made the arguments that got her to the Supreme Court. I deserve the right to be heard and represented fully. I said it is my right. I am tired of my rights being spit on and stomped out by tyrants. This is not the America that I grew up in. I said I gambled years in prison to not even be heard. I said it's soul-crushing. I said, please hear me, do the right thing, and set your ego and fear aside. I said, they don't trump the Constitution. God bless you. And then I see the oral arguments. And I'm pissed more. So I file a supplement. I said, I was finally able to find and watch the oral arguments made by Mariah. I said, I am appalled at her responses and lack of knowledge. This is not a representative of mine. I said, it's clear that she was never a representative of mine. I begged her to represent me and she refused. Every question she was asked, I have an articulate and direct answer for, and I blatantly disagree with half of her answers. I said, I caught this charge on purpose just so that I could tell the truth. I said, if you allow me the opportunity, I will be respectful and calm. I will answer your questions more quickly, articulately, and with more facts and detail than she was willing to or capable of providing. I said, I have suffered such great struggle and loss, and it is my position that the fundamental right of carrying a firearm is unique from other rights. I said, I do believe that you should look into my criminal history and question me on that. I said, I do believe that you should include my YouTube videos. I said, I do believe that I have the unequivocal right to carry a gun inside that police station. I said, I have specific and concise reasons and examples as to why that is. I said, I can point to specific cases and laws to support my stance. I said, please allow me to answer your question so that you can make a fully informed choice. I said, God told me to carry that gun into the police station, and he told me that I would stand before you. I said, please don't deprive me of my blessing and my opportunity to set a wrong right. I said, a wrong affecting millions of hardworking, free people for 100 years. Please allow me to stand before you and plead my case. Please do not confuse my YouTube persona that I use with Austin Mahana. My YouTube name is Agent Trenchcoat, a character. I made that name because we called the British Redcoats in 1776. It is my position that the ATF is the modern Redcoat in America today. Hence the name Agent, ATF, Trenchcoat. I said it was a slur against the British Army. I said I am not dangerous or harsh. I said I am professional. Thank you for the consideration, and God bless you. So immediately after my old lawyer that I couldn't get a hold of did oral arguments, she left the fucking office. She left the office. Quit. Disappeared. And then they're going to give me to some new guy. I literally, dude, I couldn't get a hold of this dude for over a week. I'd been calling and calling and calling. I filed that motion. He calls me not 4 hours later. They wouldn't post it on YouTube. They didn't want me to see it. They posted all the other ones right up. I'm not going to let them win, man. It's not going to happen.